Is on.
Yep.
So the topic that we talk about for sure with problem behaviors is, when does food become coercive?
Oh.
Any thoughts on that? Right, the whole point of positive reinforcement training is we're trying to minimize the coerciveness of training and encourage them to engage of their own volition. But often when we're addressing problem behaviors, we're walking a very, very fine line there. So when do you think can the use of food become actually coercive?
The use of food or taking away food?
The use of food in training in general,
Oh,
when
well,
we're trying to
taking it
address
away.
when taking it away. Yeah.
I think if like the horse doesn't have like a choice to leave.
Yeah, which sometimes with the problem behaviors, we're
Yeah.
minimizing their choices so that we can try to resolve the issue. So that's a hard one. Any other thoughts?
When it won't do anything other than when there's food incentive involved?
I'm sorry, one more time.
When it won't do anything other than when there's food involved. Like if it's stubborn and won't react at all unless there's food.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I guess if they're hungry, if you're not giving them food for a while to get them motivated to do something.
Yes,
positive,
and that
so
is
you're sort of starving them.
Yes, and that can be a big misunderstanding that happens when people who are experienced with positive reinforcement with dogs cross over to horses. That's pretty common in dog training, is not feeding them, or like feeding them their meal for the day as their reinforcement. And so there was some of that bleeding over into the horse world that people have been trying to correct, because in a horse's case that is not going to work very well.
I see. Like you have to do this first before you can get your food.
Yeah. So how do you think we can tell when we're working with a horse if the food is becoming coercive? What are some of the signs that we might see?
Like food anxiety sometimes.
Yeah, food anxiety. And so what behaviors?
Over threshold.
Yeah, so what are some of the behaviors we'd see? Like what might a horse do that tells us that they're experiencing food anxiety or they're going over threshold?
Like I guess if they're constantly just like in your space or like trying to be in your pack and they're not responding to like any cues of like trying to give space.
Yeah.
Frantic, becoming frantic about getting the food.
Would they charge at you? I don't know.
I mean, a horse that has a significant amount of food anxiety, that's bordering on into food aggression certainly could, yeah. I would say some of the big ones that you look for are like vocalizations. Like that's something with Slick that I'm always kind of keeping an eye on. As he's a very vocal guy anyway, but during training, when two things pair up, when he drops and he starts vocalizing, that's usually when I take a break and give him a couple handfuls, because that's usually a signal to us that they're starting to go above where they're really thinking.
So I've had a couple situations where like I'm walking with Jezzy and she is like over my shoulder and like
She's a vocalizer, yeah.
Would that be considered like where she's would that be considered like borderline?
Yeah, I would say she's I would say that she's another one that can get overstimulated by the food, and she's not a boy, so we don't have the dropping that we can use as a signal, but the vocalizations can be. So I would say yes, that's a time where maybe give her a couple handfuls and see if that helps, and if that Angel and if that helps her smooth back out again.
Because it happened yesterday, like when we were on our second lap walking around and she was doing it like on her second lap, and I'd already just been like walking and free feeding her.
Yeah.
So
And Slick did it to me, and so I gave him more food in a bowl where my hand wasn't involved until he calmed down, and then I also just gave him a bowl of food on the ground too.
Yeah, for whatever reason, switching to feeding out of the bowl seems to help a lot of horses that are getting overstimulated by food or they're having some food anxiety. I don't know if it's because we're no longer in control of the food, the food is a free resource, or if it's something else. I'm not sure what it is, but the bowls seem like they help a lot with those kind of issues. So what I do when I'm working with a horse with a problem behavior, because as you all have seen in our journey here, there are times where we do deem it necessary to minimize their ability to leave, or to freely participate because of something that they need to get done, whether it's their feet or vaccinations or whatever it is. The biggest thing I look for is over time, do they become more confident in the behavior? Do they become calmer doing the behavior? If they're not, then we need to figure out a different intervention, because it means that the food is the only reason that they're even tolerating it. And we need to figure out another way to try to get to the same answer.
And what interventions are on the list?
So like for example with Croissant, of having her head restrained when doing her feet, because of the risk of her biting, things like that. So if her behavior isn't improving, then I would try to figure out something else to do, like moving to protected contact or something else. Same thing like with Goliath. If Goliath wasn't improving, being in protected contact with essentially free choice feed while working with him, we'd have to figure out something else. With Goliath, he's right there on the edge, which I think you all saw, or no, I don't think you guys were there for Goliath. Carrie was. Carrie saw it. Where he's right on the edge, where the food is coercive. He's lining up. He knows what he's supposed to do. He doesn't particularly want to do it, but for the food, it's worth it, and he'll do it. So he's been a challenging one as far as trying to make sure that he's improving.
So how do you bridge that gap between where he is now and the food being less coercive?
Lots and lots of repetitions where the bad thing doesn't happen. So lots and lots of repetitions of lining up where he doesn't get a poke for vaccination prep or the actual vaccinations. Lots and lots of repetitions where he lines up and we do just short duration hoof lifts, not working on lengthening duration. So doing a lot of going backwards down our little ladder, so that he doesn't think that every time he's going to ask for it, it's going to be hard, and pushing his comfort zone. Those are my thoughts on it. Any other questions?
So, to like paraphrase, it you notice it becomes coercive when they're doing things only for the food and they're not like becoming more relaxed over time. They're still like really anxious about like where's the food, when am I gonna eat, even though you've maybe had 10 sessions with them, and it's like the same predictable thing, click, treat, and they're still
manic.
Yeah.
Feels manic to me. Like and also it seems like when that's happening, they also become, it's hard to hand feed.
Yeah.
Because they get
they
really
get grabby
aggressive with the food, which is one of the first signs when they're aggressive with the food that they're anxious.
Yes, no, that's one that I don't think I listed, but yes, definitely it's one to always look out for if you're starting to feel teeth, or in Sweepy's case, she's starting to suck your hand in her mouth. Let me go to a bowl.
How would you explain, with working with Sweepy, that's still a pretty big issue for her?
Yeah, no, it is, and that's where the bowl breaks are everything.
So
yeah, everything for her, so that she can come back to back under threshold and reset herself and regulate herself.
Got it.
And again, I'm not entirely sure where it came from her, for her, but it is where it is, and she has improved a lot.
She has improved.
Oh yeah, so when I first started working with her, every 3 minutes I had to do a bowl break.
Oh wow. Okay.
And then then it was every 5 minutes, then it was every 10 minutes, then it was maybe just once or twice a session. So she has improved a lot.
Oh, okay.
But it's a continuous process.
So riding from bowl to bowl with Slick would probably be
help
helpful.
a lot. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I like using bowls for riding with horses that have food anxiety and or anxiety in general, because again, it gives them there's just something about the separation between not us handing them the food, but the food being in the bowl, that seems to help them a lot. And then also just the stance of them having to put their head down, into more of a grazing position. Thank you, Elisa. And into a grazing position to eat, seems to help them regulate a lot as well. Yes. And I think Sarah's point about taking away food, withholding food, is a really important one, because we talked about that a little bit, I think, in earlier weeks, where how I tend to practice positive reinforcement is doing my best never to withhold food, essentially. Find anything we can reinforce them for, and then use different value reinforcers. You know, if a horse is really struggling to solve the problem that I'm putting before them, then something like a higher value reinforcement for when they get closer to what we're looking for, and then a lower value reinforcement no matter what, as long as they're trying, helps a lot as far as frustration and food.
Can it also take them over the edge? Like I'm wondering, I thought about using carrots with Slick, but based on how he goes up the ladder, I'm afraid carrots could then push him over the edge because it's higher value.
Oh yeah, no, I think he's one that really needs chew time to calm down. So I'd say you could mix in carrots. So, you know, when he gets closer to what you're looking for, give him a carrot and the low value reinforcer. But I wouldn't give him just a carrot because yeah, I think with that minimal chew time it would help him keep spiraling. Good question. Any other thoughts or questions on food?
And then I know we talked about with Croissant too that it might be helpful to try like feeding her some mushy before our session.
Yes.
So is that like a good way to kind of avoid?
Yes, that's one of the big reasons why I recommend feeding mushy when you're growing them or grounding or something before you start, is so that they have some of the food that we're going to use in training before we even start. Because even I went through a phase early on when I was experimenting with positive reinforcement where just grass pellets became so exciting for the horses that I had a lot of food anxiety issues. Because they tied it so much to doing things and fun things, getting to do all this cool stuff and all the endorphins and everything else that was going on. And it was a big struggle. And it was just grass pellets. It was literally the same as their hay. And so now that can be even more of a challenge because we have some skinnies and things like that, you know, I encourage that we do use some senior mixed into just to get them more calories. And that's even more exciting than grass pellets. But with any horse that you feel like is experiencing food anxiety, you can always try just grass pellets and see if that helps. And then again, yeah, like a mushy beforehand helps a lot.
Yeah, for Peppy, I started out with mushies and then downgraded to, and that did not work well for him. I downgraded to just like, the grass pellets and senior, but it wasn't a mushy, and he was not as pleased.
Yeah, he might have to.
Yeah, I have to figure that out.
Yep, you're gonna have to put on one of the big, the big mushy packs and ride with mushy.
Exactly.
You might need to carry a towel with you so you can toss it and then wipe your hand off.
Cookies was a good switch for him.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Molly rides him. What she does is she has her pack full of grass pellets, but then she also has a bag of carrots.
Okay.
And that has seemed to work well for them.
Okay, I'll try that.
Yeah, so it'd be something to experiment with.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts or questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.